Well, Senator, it is clear that Donald Trump is running not just the dumbest administration, but certainly the most dangerous. And as this story has unfolded over the last 72 hours and continues to, personally, as a Marine, how do you feel about the danger that Pete Hegseth is putting our service members in and all Americans in? And how has that led to you calling for his resignation?
Well, I mean, from my perspective, and I think about it when I was a young Marine infantry, I relied on my leadership. And they used to send me out on some very hard operations and missions. Sometimes, it was just me and like 12 guys giving us direction, and you go and do whatever they told us to do. And so when you see your leadership doing stupid shit, which I did see in the war, you start questioning about what's going on, whether you should actually execute, your mission. That creates a lot of other problems.
Yeah.
What I saw the Secretary of Defense do was basically get on his Signal chat, treat it like Twitter. And what he wasn't trying to do was be an effective leader. He was basically trying to impress, these people on the Signal chat.
Yeah.
You could have done all of that, and you could have done it in a skip. They could have done better ways to do it. And also, the amount of information he was relaying was absolutely unnecessary. So he basically was trying to, boost his own morale, his own credibility, or like whatever he's, missing, or whatever he has, deficiencies in, by doing this. And it puts people at risk. The fact is, like, Signal is not as secure as people think it is. Some of these people were overseas while they were on Signal, which means their phones can also be traced by typing, by different types of intelligence gathering methods. And now, to make matters worse, he's not taking any accountability. The most important thing you need to be, especially when you're a leader, is to be accountable. It's one of the first things they teach you when you're an 18, 19-year-old Marine, that accountability is the key to that. So he's not building trust right now. He's certainly not building trust with the men and women around him. And if I was a young man or woman in the military, I'd be really worried, like, what is this guy up to? Like, is this guy even up for the job? Because he doesn't even have shit together. And the problem with, not the problem, but the reality is, when you're in the Marines and military in general, when your leadership doesn't have their stuff together, people die. And I unfortunately have experienced that by a lot of my friends dying in the war.
Yeah, and I think it's just so abundantly clear that these people are obviously putting us in danger, but they also just don't seem to care. They're more focused on trying to wordsmith their way out of this.
Yeah.
If this was someone that Pete Hegseth would jump to call a DEI hire, like I've been thinking about this for the past couple of days.
Sure.
If this had been a black woman, how do you think Pete Hegseth would have been responding right now?
Oh, she would have been fucked. Like, they would have been so awful to her. They would have, anybody except for someone like Pete. And the thing is, like, Pete is dumb. There's without a doubt, he's dumb. He's not qualified for this job. And, now he's gone and proven it. Again, but this is all inter-politics. The problem is, like, it's just dangerous. It is dangerous if you are in the military, that your leadership is acting this way. Which is why I asked for his resignation as soon as I find out that, no, he didn't just was part of an organized Signal chat group that should not have happened. He was actually also sharing real time intelligence about the strikes and where they were going. And look, the fact that Donald Trump is either saying he didn't know about it or doesn't care also should worry a lot of us. Like, he is the commander in chief. He needs to have control about what's happening right now. He seems not to know what's happening within the Department of Defense. There's four members of the military that just disappeared in Lithuania. Their bodies were just found. When asked, the president hadn't even heard about it. On the border of Belarus and Lithuania, we lose, 4 military personnel. Hopefully nothing, something innocuous like a training accident. But the fact that the president didn't even know that they were missing tells you that he probably is clocked out when it comes to a lot of our national security issues, which is not what needs to be happening.
Well, he's probably clocked out because he's not the real president. It's Elon Musk, who is also making sure he falls in line with this administration's policy of making our current service members unsafe and attacking our veterans, making just broad cuts to the VA that you've talked about. What are you hearing from your constituents, men and women that you've served with, about how these VA cuts are affecting them and their family members and just really everyone in our country?
Well, if I was Elon Musk and I was the Republicans, I'd be very scared because all the guys I served with, I was in, I was a grunt. Most of them are Republican. They've been They supported Trump 3 times now, and including 3 times this last election too. And they're pissed. And these are guys that are both veterans. They receive VA benefits like I do, or work for the federal government, and they feel that, number one, they feel betrayed, that they're getting fired, they're getting treated with disrespect, that their friends are getting treated with disrespect, that they're not being, their service is just basically be thrown aside just so you could hit some bottom line that Elon Musk wants. They think that, and I agree with them, that Elon Musk and his Doge boys from Silicon Valley are out of touch and don't really understand the VA world. And so they just look at numbers and just want to cut numbers, when in fact, this is a very hard thing to do. When you cut services at the VA, people will die. But you have, 25-year-olds that have never probably met a veteran, have never, actually, have friends that are veterans that grew up in these elite schools, elite institutions, and have, 0 friends and 0 real grounding, except, whatever weirdo Elon Musk training program that they went through. And now it's affecting people, right? There, you have veterans that are depressed, that are, unfortunately losing ground. They used to have, they had good mental health, post, that they were able to build up post-war from PTSD. And now you have this asshole that's just coming and just cutting with no, no plan, nothing, and with no actual real understanding what you're doing to people's lives.
Yeah, and there was another aspect of some of these cuts or some of the changes to how things are running with regards to veterans that I've heard you talk about, the requirement to come in and work in person, or to give an explanation for why you are working from home.
You
Can you
haven't paid
explain a little
attention,
bit about how that's been affecting veterans
Yeah,
who
well, this is
make up
actually
such
one
a
of
big part of our civil service?
So this is actually one of my guys that I served with in Iraq, a guy that I patrolled next to for 7 months. He went and served his country, in the military, in the Marines, then got out and joined as an employee with Department of Defense. I don't want to give too much information about him. He moved about 50 miles away from his place of employment because they largely let people do that for a couple years. And now they're requiring people to come back.
Yeah.
And the problem with that is there's not even enough spaces for them to come back and work at their physical location. Another Marine buddy of mine is a spouse of a military member. And she is, stationed in not an easy place, and he's been working remotely. And so he's trying to get permission to work remotely. My other friend, by the way, who I was telling you about, the one who's has about 50 miles away, is asking for accommodations because, for someone with PTSD, he admittedly has it. This can be extremely stressful. Now, there are exceptions to it, but now he has to go and sit down with his supervisor and say, this is my condition, and has to go into details. And he's going to have to do it repeatedly every time there's a new boss in order to get a new waiver. He's got the disability rating from the VA. He's got, doctor's notes, everything else like that. He shouldn't have to sit there, and every time something changes, he needs to go and talk to a new stranger and tell him what his mental health status is. Like, I wouldn't want that. Like, I'm very public. I have PTSD. I'm very public about it. But if I wasn't a public person and I had to continually talk to people, it's difficult, especially when you're trying to, better yourself. And now you have your whole colleagues all around you knowing more and more about your mental, health.
These guys they're just assholes. And when I first heard you tell that story, it just broke my heart. This is a no empathy administration. They also don't understand. They just don't understand.
They don't understand it. And it's tough first of all, it's very tough for a military veteran or someone in the military to even start PTSD. You have to basically get yourself therapy. You have to get yourself over the mental block to actually start it. And now this is going to discourage men and women from actually, I think, going to get therapy, because then you're gonna have to talk to your boss every time you need any change in your work output or your work status.
And it's certainly going to discourage people from wanting to work in the federal government, and that's part of the plan. You know, Russ Vought said he wants federal workers to feel traumatized when they come into work. And we recently saw a memo leaked out of the White House saying that it's Elon's plan to derail and to break Social Security. Now, you've obviously been on the road. You were with Senator Mark Kelly. You're holding town halls. You're talking to folks about, one, what we can do to combat what's happening in this administration, but two, certainly how we can push a positive vision for how government can still work. How do we do both of those things at the same time? Talk about they are breaking shit. We have to respond, but also our government actually can still work for you, and we want it to work for you. This is not the end of things.
I mean, first of all, the reason I'm trying to break Social Security is because Social Security is the most successful government program, right? And I mean, you're so young, you don't think about it yet. But,
I'm thinking about it a lot lately.
Yeah, I'm 45. I've been working since the age of 14. And I think, Jack, you probably have a lot of friends that have been working around the same time from 14, 15. You've been paying into Social Security since high school, if you had a high school job, right? So I've been working since I was 14. So I've been working for 31 years. And that money is my retirement money. It's not all my retirement money, but for some people it is. And it has worked effectively to bring down senior poverty, the best poverty program that this country has ever done. Elon wants to break it because the only way that they can keep getting these mega tax cuts is they have to find money. And the way to do that is to destroy Social Security and your overall trust of the government. Now, Trump doesn't have the balls, nor do the Republicans have the balls to actually put a ballot or to put a bill up, right? To go and vote and say, we're going to gut Social Security, because they know the American public will absolutely kill you at the ballot box if you do that. So instead, what they're trying to do is they're trying to squeeze it out. And what they're going to squeeze out is they're going to try to make people that live in rural Arizona, for example, have to drive probably 5 hours to present themselves to make sure people know that there is no Social Security fraud. Then, by the way, the amount of Social Security fraud is almost non-existent. Number two, even if you, and they're saying this for your first time, right? For your first time, you actually enroll. But now they're going through and they're arbitrarily stopping people from getting Social Security that have been receiving Security and finding them as fraud. And then when they try to call up on the phone to get someone on the phone, a lot of times they can't get them. And so what's the next step you got to do? Well, now you got to drive. Well, guess what they're also doing? Now they're shutting down Social Security offices. So even if you're not close to retirement, because you actually are a good, caring human being, because you're a good American, you should care, because we're screwing a lot of working class people over. And for a lot of them, this is their means of living, and it's being done to help the ultra rich. And so if you care about this, anytime you hear about somebody having a problem, you got to make sure you reach out to your congressman, especially Republican congressman, and tell them like what is happening there. Make sure election time we turn around, we talk to our seniors that vote on this, or anyone that votes on this, and make sure we punish the Republicans. Yes, Elon Musk is doing this, but Elon Musk is doing it because Republicans are empowering him. They're giving him the power to do this. If we punish the Republicans, they punish Elon Musk. That's how this works. That's how we clamp down, and that's how we probably turn the ship around.
Yeah, and the attacks on Social Security trickle down to more than just seniors. There's seniors who take care of their grandchildren or their children and support their families off the limited amount of money they get, when Elon Musk is bringing in, what is it, like 8, 9, 10 million a day now? And I just don't feel like a lot.
Yeah, but the thing is, like, we don't need, there's no necessity for us to get these top stories, right? You paid the money, you earn it, you have a right to have a secure retirement. You have a right to have an enjoyable retirement. You have a right to go on vacation, do whatever the hell you want. You've worked hard for this, right? So yeah, I think it's important we talk about these stories. I have family members that are all reliant on Social Security. But guess what? Even if you're not, you don't deserve to be treated this way. You certainly don't deserve to be treated this way by assholes like Elon Musk and these little 24-year-old Doge boys. You deserve the time to actually enjoy life. You worked hard, and there's no reason that these guys can use non-democratic methods to get this. If you want to actually take down Social Security, then have the balls to put a bill on the floor and do it. Don't do this, warped around a way that you're doing it right now for someone that's as unaccountable as Elon Musk. Now, because he's unaccountable, the only way we keep him accountable is you got to hurt politically the person that is closest to Elon Musk, and that's Donald Trump and the Republicans. And that's how we save Social Security.
Yeah, and that requires us to do a little broadening of our coalition right now. I know you are so
100%.
incredibly busy. I got one more question for you, though. You've been doing a lot of important outreach to young guys like myself who are, of course, distrustful of all of these institutions and don't really have a positive view of our government. How do you think Democrats more broadly can message to young men? What is the message that you want to take out? I know there's a lot of Democrats who
Yeah.
probably aren't able to go, like, talk to the Nelk boys, and they certainly wouldn't want them on, or Theo Vaughn, or even feel comfortable going on Rogan. What do you think Democrats need to be doing differently, messaging and like legislatively, to address the concerns of young men who kind of feel isolated from our party and isolated really just in their lives in general?
Yeah, I mean, like, first of all, I think we have to treat them like we would treat any other group. Like,
Yeah.
why are we isolating men and not talking to them? I think that's stupid, right? We shouldn't do that to any American, right? Number one. Like, number two, whatever the reason, and they have people in the past, like, it doesn't make sense. They're U.S. citizens. Number two, like, you got to go where they're at, what they're listening to. I think this is one of the things we did during our campaign that was a little different from other campaigns. Is
Yep.
we were very much involved in kind of breaking out of like the bubbles to make sure that men were able to talk to me and see that I had at least alignment with them. I guess is the word I'm looking about. I also my messaging was always, I think, more universal, not necessarily niche. But I wasn't afraid of saying, things that I guess some Democrats consider controversial, where, I think that men were feeling that they weren't providing for the families, they didn't have a future, that they were falling behind, and that the Democrats were ignoring them, and that we should be, interested in making sure, figuring out, like, economically, what could we be doing to help these guys? Like, how can we make sure they have good jobs? And guess what? It's a joke, but I actually do say this about at least Latino men. Like, Latino men want to have good jobs. They want to buy a nice truck. And by the way, there's nothing wrong with that. We shouldn't be looking down on this kind of, on the fact that they want to buy a nice truck, or that men want to, lead a good life. Like, overall, we could be a really big tent, and let's not be afraid of it. And also, we just need to understand where these men are coming from. Like, if you're born, for example, in the year 2000, you've seen a lot of shit, right? A lot of things happen, right? Or even before that, if you go into your mid 90s, right? You start looking at it. By the time 2001 rolls around, you just saw September 11th. Then you saw the government lie to you about the Iraq War. Then you saw your buddies go to war for almost 20 decades, or for 2 decades, for wars that shouldn't have gone that long. And then you saw them get fucked up at the VA or worse. And then after that, you've already gone through one recession and the bubble. Then you're going through another recession in 2008. By the way, you're at this point, you're already 20 if you were born in the mid 90s. You're finally out of the recession in 2010, but like everything is sluggish. You can't do anything, can't buy anything. Donald Trump gets in. The world looks a little better. Next thing you know, COVID comes in, that shuts you down for 2 years. Then you get out of COVID, you can't buy a goddamn house. It's like everything's expensive. School's more expensive. And you get to talk to your parents, and your parents like, man, I never lived through the stuff that you're living through right now. So of course, if you're a young man, you're like, WTF? Like, why wouldn't you feel that way? It's, if anything, what they're feeling is actually more realistic and human than what, like, a lot of other people are not feeling, right? Or pretending to feel. But understanding that matters, right? Like, men are frustrated that they can't buy a home. Men are frustrated that they're staying at home with their parents. It's some of that is caused by their own actions. Some of it is caused by us as government not valuing what is important to both them and to women, right? Like, who wants to be at home in their 30s? I think it's sad if financially you can't do it because we've fucked up the government so much you can't afford a house. It's okay to say that, right? It's okay to say, yeah, we're sorry, we messed up. You should be able to buy a house. There is no excuse for that. And I think at times we make excuses, right? And I've actually gotten scolded at by other Democrats when I bring this stuff up. Like, well, maybe they want to live at home with their parents. Like, nobody wants to live at home with their parents. Just stop lying.
I can tell you that much. As a 22-year-old dude, I can tell you that much.
I live at home with your parents. I love my mom, but I never want to live at home with my parents once I graduated. Like, you want to be able to go out, you want to be able to have dates. Like, you feel like you're pathetic if you can't, you can't say you have your own place, you have your own car. I mean, it's all these things that do matter.
Tied up in this economic insecurity.
Absolutely. And by the way, when you don't have economic security, then you start looking for other bullshit security, right?
Yep.
That's when they start following these idiots that are all jacked up on roids and not even know what else they're doing half the time, because that's actually more attainable than doing the things about buying a home and starting a car. So anyway, I'm pretty sure I freaked out my staff here, but anyway, that's what I think.
Well, I think you're spot on everything that you said. We need to provide a place for people to go where they can feel that there is a path forward, rather than allowing them to go down this right wing rabbit hole that starts as like, we're going to be able to help you with this one small thing that you can do every day,
Right.
and then it's full blown Jordan Peterson misogyny. So no, we need to meet people where they are. We need to provide a positive alternative. You're doing that every day in your messaging and the work that you're doing. I kept you long. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much, Senator.
No problem. I'm not sure I'm doing it in my messaging, but I'm going to keep doing whatever I'm doing.
I appreciate it.
All right. Adios.